Dear sister, ladies, what's going on? You know, I think when I go to do a Dear Sister podcast, I think like, okay, who am I to speak to women? Well, I'm your brother. I'm the one that cares with nothing in return. And I think more sisters need that. More women need that. Um, Man voice that doesn't require an exchange from you. Man wisdom that doesn't require exchange from you. Um, that's the voice of a father. That's the voice of a brother. It's the voice of a man that wants the best for you, that doesn't require anything from you. So that's why I'm here. I wrote a book called The Soul of Sarah, and I wanted to share it. I wrote it after I eulogized my mother back in 2012. And it's just a lot of principles that I think that women ought to know. And I believe that if women knew more of their own value through a man's eyes, through a male perspective, it would help a lot. um, we need each other. And I think there's a lot of social media stuff that makes us want to separate. And like I always say, I believe a lot of that stuff is funded, a lot of the stuff is pushed, because if you break up the relationship, then you break up the security. And so I'm here to combat the stuff that we hear on social media, all the broken philosophies that really tear families apart. And I don't like it. I don't like it because we can't have a healthy society being forced to look at each other so strangely. And so I want to share with you today. I want to talk about how God would change your mind, and I want to talk about it through the eyes of biblical Sarah. Biblical Sarah. And in fact, that's why part of me is why I wrote the book based on Sarah, because when I eulogized my mother, and I talked about this in some of my other podcasts, but when I eulogized my mother, and I was thinking, what do you say? Like, what do you say when your mom dies? Like, first of all, like, who's going to eulogize their mom, right? And I didn't do it because I was a hero. I did it because at the time I was a pastor. My church was broken. My sister was broken. My father had passed years before, and I took on the responsibility to carry everybody, which wasn't a great decision. I should have sat back and grieved my mother. But I think part of me was able to grieve when I wrote The Soul of Sarah, when I was able to write this book. A lot of my ability to grieve was right there. This book is on Amazon right now. If you want to go grab it, here's the physical copy. But a lot of women are grabbing this book. I talk about the how the mind and the emotions of a woman, it locks together, but it's a reproductive system in a woman's body, in her natural body, but there's also a reproductive system in her spiritual body. And I want to point women in that direction. But today, so get that book, Soul of Sarah, on Amazon right now. I want to talk about changing your mind, right? And I believe that this podcast will probably be two parts, but I want to talk about changing your mind and ultimately how your persona can match your promise. And if your persona doesn't match your promise, most likely you'll be delayed into walking into it because somewhere in you, you don't believe here that you're worthy of it. I think that's a big battle in a lot of women's minds, right? As I counsel and as I talk to people for years and years and help many people, worthlessness has been coming up as a constant in women's lives because of mistakes she may have made let me say this to you. You're not the mistake you made, right? You can't take a portion of your life and tie your whole life to that one portion of your life, right? Let me get into this lesson because I could just, but you're my sister. So let me talk to you. I think that worthless battle is what causes you all to connect with horrible men. Let me just talk straight. It's that worthless battle. It's saying, am I worthy of more? Right? It's because you've tied your personality or your persona to your past. And I teach this a lot, and I want to say this to you, sis. Whoever desires to keep on reminding you of your past deserves to stay there. I mean, whoever, if you have people in your life, whether it be a friend of yours, a parent, a boyfriend, a husband, that always wants to constantly remind you of where you've been, then they ought to stay there, right? But let's get into this because I think that we need to deal with the persona. Who are you? Because that's where you decide from. You decide from who you think you are, right? Just as much as when you drive a car, you drive in the direction you're looking. That's a fact, right? So if I'm looking right and I'm supposed to be going straight, as much as I'm keeping that car straight, eventually I'll begin to veer in the direction that I'm looking in, right? And so a lot is when you go back in your life and you look on some of the decisions you've made, you start to say, well, where was I looking at? And most of the time you weren't looking at yourself. You were looking at something you hoped to be that you may not have been ready to be, or you were looking at something that would save you from where you are when really you are your own superhero. But it starts right here. It starts in what you believe. You choose based on what you believe about yourself, sis. That's the fact. You choose based on what you believe about yourself, right? And the question is, how did you create this thought, or who helped you create it, right? Because the mind of a woman is a womb, right? And I talk about this a lot. I'll continue to talk about it because you need to know, sis, that your mind is a womb. A man doesn't have a womb as far as his mind goes. Just like he doesn't want to have one in his body, he doesn't have one in his mind. We can simply put something out of our mind, or we can put it in boxes in our mind. But that's not how your mind works as a woman. As a woman, your mind works just like your womb will. You receive a seed in your ear, negative or positive, and whatever that seed goes in your ear, you womb it right here, and you make it bigger, right? You put creativity to bad words. That's why you got to create. You got to protect rather from here what goes inside of you, because no matter what, you will produce it. That's what you're built to do. That's the beauty of you. And the beauty of you is your ability to build. So watch what you build, right? I still haven't gotten into the podcast yet. I'm going to get into it in a second. But I'm talking to you right now because I really, really want to get this to you. I want to say this to you. The value of you, and even scripturally, look at it. God told Adam had a garden. Adam named the garden. God put the man there. He was surrounded. Everything was good for Adam. And then God came to Adam and said something very unbelievable to him. He said, it's not good for you to be alone. Now, I want you to peep this. Let me see if I got it. All right, I got my water bottles right here, right? So let's take the one with God is the one with the limited lime in it, right? And right? God is the one with the limited lime in it. And then you have this here, right? And so he's right next to him. God is right next to Adam. When he says to him, it's not good for you to be alone. Wait a minute. I am God, the creator of all things. I even created you and everything you're experiencing. And right now you're telling me that even while you're with me, it's no good for you to be alone. Listen to this, ladies. Even God knew that he could not be to Adam what a woman could. God even stepped back and said, I can't do what she can do. I can't help you process like she can help you process, because she's the one that will get closest to your heart. You'll serve me, but you will crumble in her presence, right? And so let me get into this, because that's a whole nother podcast. But let me get into this. Number one, you got to shift your identity. You got to embrace shifts that happen in your life. I've noticed from like my mom, my sisters, my daughters, many women I've counseled, that a woman can shift, right? But sometimes it becomes hard to shift, because once you find a comfort zone, right? A comfort zone in your life, it's hard to shift out of it. And sometimes what I found is a lot of you sisters can be comfortably uncomfortable. In other words, you can learn how to live in a situation that's not for you. This is why you got to change your mind, because when you change your mind about you, you'll refuse to live in situations that's not for you. You'll refuse to submit to situations that aren't best for you. But first you got to embrace the shifts that happened to you. Right? Because this is what God was doing with Adam. He was changing her name. He was changing her name because he was calling her into a new role. Right? So the question is, sis, what's changing about you that you're fighting against? Right? Because the change is not to make you uncomfortable. The change is calling you into a new role for yourself. That's what it is. It's not to destroy you. And a lot of times we think being moved is something trying to destroy us or God trying to destroy us. The truth is God is trying to measure you. He's trying to measure you for the prayers you prayed. He's trying to measure you for the things you said you wanted to become. You have to learn how to embrace that shift. I know you've gotten used to this and you've gotten used to that, but that's the danger in some of you having good relationships. You've gotten used to mediocrity. So you don't even know how to embrace something that's better for you because it has to change here. It has to change here. And somehow you got to get to the place where you can, you can almost baptize your mind from what people have said to you. Some of you sisters or you're moving in your 30s and 40s and you're moving your life and situating your life based on what someone said to you in high school. You know why? Because somewhere you have cradled and birthed those words. Right? And so there has to be a place where you move yourself, right? Like God had to do with Sarah in order for her to have that child, she had to move from Sarai, Sarai, to Sarah, Sarah. Now, what's the principle about that? The practical principle about that was God knew that I cannot get this through to her because her mind won't accept that she's able to do this. Her mind will not accept that she's able to do this. And some of you are dealing with this right now. You got a big dream, a big goal, a big hope, but your mind won't allow you to accept that you're worthy of what you're thinking. Come on, sis. If you're thinking it, you're worthy of it. Right? Because everything starts here. If you're thinking it, you're worthy of it. It's the negative sides of you that lie to yourself that speak against the very dream that's in front of you. You have to change your persona to match the promise that's in front of you, right? You got to embrace the change, embrace the parts of the journey you don't understand. And let me say this to you, because I feel like somebody needs to hear this. Embrace the part of the journeys you can't control. Because that's a big issue with you sisters, right? You want to control everything. You want to control everything. You want to make sure things are in line the way you say. And let me tell you something. Your constant charge to be in control is what's causing you to live out of control. Your constant desire to be in control is what's causing you to live out of control. That's because somewhere you got to change your mind. And sometimes the plans you have laid out aren't always the plans for you. And the question is, where did you get those plans? Did you get those plans from broken women? Did you get those plans from the mother that said, this is how men are? You see? See those thoughts? Let me tell you something, sis. A woman can only tell you or give you information about the last man she dated. She can't tell you about men. And her advice is only coming from what she's been through. It's not to say it's not good advice, but just understand that that advice is coming from her experience. So you can't then tie her advice to every man, because there's some men that want to protect you, and you have a lesson of you're living out a lesson of trying to protect yourself. Right? It's hard to find a man that will fight for you when you're always fighting him for yourself. Right? You're fighting him to hold on to you when he's fighting you to hold on to you. It's a change in the mind, right? See, this is the reflection. This is the reflection you got to check out. The reflection you got to check out is what roles and titles are you holding on to, right? What roles and titles and emotional spaces are you holding on to that no longer align with where you're trying to go as a woman? Right? What labels have been put on you? You may have been promiscuous in your younger years, right? What label that still holds on to you from your 20s, from your teens, right? You may have been very soft-minded and been broken by people, right? That doesn't mean you have to walk in that. What roles are you still holding on to? What identities are you still holding on to that do not align with who you are now? There has to be a place of constant reflection. See, self-judgment is different than reflection. Judgment comes to take you down. Reflection comes to find out what needs to be in place so I can be the woman of my own dreams. That's where you got to go. What roles, right? So number one, in order to change your persona to match your promise, you got to embrace the shifts in your mentality. Don't fight the shifts that's in your mentality. Don't say you're going crazy. Don't say, oh man, I'm changing. You're supposed to change. At what point were you supposed to stay the same? right? And understand this, a lot of people that want you to stay the same is because your pain has benefited them. Be very careful, right? Of the roles you keep to keep other people happy, or the questions you don't ask, or the things you don't say. Putting yourself in that trap. You got to change your mind, right? So number one, embrace the shift in your identity. Number one, right? Sarai had to embrace herself as Sarah in order for her to ever receive the promise that was upon her. Her persona had to match her promise, right? And that's an inward work. That's nothing somebody can do to you. That's an inward work that you have to do because you desire to be where you got to go so bad that you're unwilling to stay where you are mentally. It's not about moving, sis. You can pack up and move to another city right now. You will be the constant person there with you. You can move across the world. You will be there with you. Your mind will be there with you. So it's not about who you date and where you live and whether you grow your hair or cut your hair or lock your hair. It's going to be about where you are in your mind that determines where you go. Number two, let's get into it. Number two, believe in your worth and your potential, right? Sarah was old when they said she was going to have a baby. She was old. So it was like, well, no, she looked at who she was and she compared herself. She compared herself to what she heard about herself. You're going to have a child. She looked at herself, right? There's a lot of things that's on your mind to become. And the last thing you want to do is when you're looking forward to where you want to go, the last thing you want to do is look at yourself. Because when you look at yourself, it gives you every reason why you're not supposed to achieve that. Stop looking at your last marriage of why you can't be a good wife now. Right? Stop looking at your last experience saying, well, no, well, I couldn't achieve that, so nobody wants me. Stop saying I'm a single mom with 2 or 3 kids and nobody's going to want me. No, you got to change your mentality. You got to change your mentality. You got to know that your self-worth and your potential, right? And this is another thing I want to say to you. A lot of you sisters, you get caught up in worrying about a man's potential and forgetting about your own. Right? Well, I'm going to date him. He has some potential. No. His potential may not be enough potential for you to reach your potential. Stop dating potential, right? You have potential. And the thing about your potential is you're supposed to connect with a man that can speak into your potential. If you're dating a man with only potential, he'll never speak into yours. He can't. He can't. How can he? Let me move on, right? Start believing in your ability to produce by yourself. You hear me, sis? Start believing in your ability to produce by yourself. By yourself. Start believing in your ability to produce by yourself. Right? Because listen, just because something hasn't happened in your life yet doesn't mean it won't. Right? It doesn't mean it won't. It's that some of you are surrounded by the wrong people and situations that will even allow you to move into the channels of life that you see yourself for. There's some people you got to rid yourself of before you move into those places because you'll never enjoy the fruits of your labor because the people you surrounded yourself with will eat it up before you step into it. You got to change your mind and you got to change your belief in your potential and your self-worth. Right? So the question is, this is what I want you to do. I need you to consider areas. Think about areas in your life of self-doubt and past failures that bound you right there. Right? Think about it. Don't say, oh, I'm just over it. No. Because you know what, sis? You say you're over it and then you meet something that challenges that very thing you said you was over. You'll find out it's still there. You'll find out it's still there. Right? Check the times in your life where you replace self-reflection with work. I'm just going to work so I don't have to self-reflect. I'm just going to date so I don't have to self-reflect, right? Some of you walk down the aisle and marry somebody to avoid self-reflection. And then you look up and realize I'm married to a stone cold fool. And now you're checking yourself. How did I get here? It's because you weren't willing to check yourself before you connected with him. May your persona match your promise, sister. May your persona match your promise. Because like I said, the screen at the bottom of the screen there, you're worth it. All right, I'm going to part 2 this because I don't want to go too long. But I'm going to part 2 this. But thank you so much, sisters. Thank you for listening to brother, right? I don't know much, but I know I love you. And I know I want what's best for you. You matter to me. All right. Know it, sis. Know it, know it, know it, know it. I'll be doing a live show Thursday night. I'm begin doing a live show for my sisters Thursday night, about 8 o'clock. So we'll do that. Hook up with me online, YouTube, like, share, subscribe, share with some sisters. It's just value about a woman through a male perspective. All right. Also on TikTok, I have Dear Sister Podcast on TikTok. Connect with that. All right. All right, sisters. Your value is high. Don't let anybody take it down. I love you. Talk to you soon.